The ancient courts of China were places of splendor and terror in equal measure. Golden palaces rose above marble courtyards, incense smoke curled through carved wooden halls, and silk-draped nobles whispered secrets into the ears of emperors. But beneath all the beauty lay another truth. Emperors ruled through fear as much as reverence. Their word was law, their command unquestionable, and their punishments legendary. Among the cruelest whispered punishments in imperial history was one said to merge the power of man with the unstoppable force of nature, the bamboo torture. The legend begins not in the courts themselves, but in the forests that stretched endlessly across China's southern provinces. Towering groves of bamboo swayed in the wind, stalks creaking like old wooden beams. To peasants, bamboo was life itself. It provided food, shelter, tools, and even medicine. But to the rulers who studied every facet of nature for methods of dominance, bamboo offered something else: a weapon. For the common folk, it was an exaggeration. For the emperor's executioners, it was inspiration. The earliest references to this dreadful practice appear in obscure texts tucked between war chronicles and agricultural records. A military officer in the Tang dynasty wrote of a punishment so inhuman that it leaves no wound by man's hand, but by the green spear of earth itself. Scholars argue whether this was a metaphor or reality. But for centuries, travelers told chilling tales that prisoners of the emperor, traitors, rebels, spies, or even unlucky dissenters were tied down over freshly sprouted bamboo shoots. Imagine the scene. A prisoner, stripped of dignity, lies bound on a wooden frame just above the ground. The soil has been prepared carefully, watered until damp, so that bamboo shoots beneath can grow swiftly. The first day brings little. Perhaps the prisoner scoffs, thinking the punishment absurd. But as the hours crawl by, a strange discomfort builds beneath the flesh. A thin green tip pushes upward slow, relentless, sharpened by nature itself. The body shifts, thrashes, but cannot escape. By the second day, the shoot pierces the skin. The pain is no quick stab, but a gnawing, burning invasion, inch by inch. Each sunrise brings new agony as bamboo grows through muscle, then organ, then bone. Death is slow, sometimes lasting days. The victim becomes not merely executed, but consumed by the earth. Why would emperors resort to such cruelty? Part of it was spectacle. Execution was never only about punishment. It was about message. A beheading silenced one voice. But bamboo torture transformed the condemned into a living warning. To witness such a death was to see nature itself rise in service of the emperor. It was to feel fear not just of the throne, but of the ground beneath one's feet. The story of bamboo torture gained momentum during the Ming Dynasty, when rumors spread of its use against captured spies from rival kingdoms. According to travelers from the West, who first recorded the tale in their journals, the emperors wanted punishments that blended terror with inevitability. To fight bamboo was like fighting the wind. It was impossible. And what better symbol of imperial power than nature itself pressed into service for vengeance? Yet, like many grim legends, the truth is entangled in mystery. No surviving Chinese legal code explicitly lists bamboo torture as an official execution method. Some historians argue it was never real, but propaganda invented by outsiders to portray the empire as exotic and cruel. Others counter that emperors often concealed their darkest practices to preserve an image of divine benevolence. Still, the legend persisted, told in hushed tones by villagers, by soldiers, and by scholars seeking to capture the extremes of human imagination. For every skeptic, there was another voice swearing that a cousin, or an ancestor, or a traveler from the South had seen it firsthand. Even today, farmers who walk the dense bamboo groves speak with unease of its power, its sharpness, and the possibility that the old stories were not so exaggerated after all. One of the most chilling accounts comes from the tale of General Liu, a disgraced officer during the Song dynasty. He was said to have plotted rebellion against the throne, gathering forces along the coast. When the emperor's men captured him, they wanted not just his death, but his humiliation. According to folklore, General Liu was staked above a row of bamboo shoots as his soldiers were forced to watch. They say his cries echoed for 3 days before silence fell. Whether truth or legend, the story carried weight. Peasants spoke of it for generations as proof that betrayal against the emperor was worse than death itself. But here lies the deeper question. Was bamboo torture a punishment, or was it ritual? To emperors who believed themselves the son of heaven, execution was more than justice, it was cosmic order. By allowing bamboo to grow through the flesh of a traitor, they may have seen it as a return to balance. The rebel, who had disturbed harmony, was fed back to the earth, becoming soil for the empire's eternal growth. In the stillness of the bamboo groves, it is easy to imagine how such an idea took root. The creak of stalks in the wind, the sharpness of their splinters, the relentless pressure of their growth. Bamboo is at once beautiful and merciless. To sit in its shadows is to understand why emperors, both real and imagined, might have turned it into a blade. As centuries passed, bamboo torture became one of the empire's most whispered myths. Travelers carried the tale westward, where it became part of the catalog of oriental cruelties that fascinated Europe. In smoky taverns, sailors described it as the slowest death a man could suffer. Writers embroidered the legend, speaking of bamboo forests filled with ghosts of the condemned, their spirits rising with every green stalk. Whether real or imagined, the legend serves its purpose, to remind us how thin the line is between nature's gift and nature's weapon, and how rulers of the past twisted even the simplest plant into an emblem of power. But legends are rarely told in full at once. The bamboo's roots reach deeper still, into stories of emperors, spies, and entire villages bound to its shadow. And to uncover the truth of bamboo torture, one must journey further into the groves of history, where myth and reality intertwine like the stalks themselves. The story of bamboo torture lingers like smoke across the pages of history, half truth, half fable, yet undeniably powerful. To understand how such a punishment became etched into the imagination of both East and West, one must look closely at how bamboo functioned within Chinese society, and how emperors used both fact and fear to rule. Bamboo was never just a plant in China. From the earliest dynasties, it was revered as a symbol of resilience, humility, and purity. Its straight stalks came to represent moral integrity, bending with the wind yet never breaking. Scholars compared themselves to bamboo, upright and unyielding. Poets praised it as the gentleman of plants. Entire villages relied on bamboo for food, scaffolding, paper, and tools. In short, it was life itself. But as history often shows, symbols of life can be twisted into instruments of death. By the Han Dynasty, 206 BCE to 220 CE, bamboo was already used in punishments, not as a growing spear, but in its hardened form. Canes of bamboo were fashioned into rods for flogging, a penalty applied to criminals and soldiers alike. Bamboo splinters were driven beneath fingernails in interrogations. Sharp bamboo stakes formed defensive barriers in war. The leap from bamboo as a tool of discipline to bamboo as a weapon of terror was not far, at least in imagination. Yet when historians search the official records of dynasties, the Tang legal codes, the Ming Dynasty law books, or the meticulous Qing archives, they find no concrete evidence of bamboo torture as execution. The punishments listed were varied and brutal: beheadings, strangulation, slow slicing, linki, boiling, and even live burial. But nowhere is bamboo mentioned as a growing blade of death. This absence has fueled centuries of debate. Some argue that bamboo torture was never more than rumor, a grotesque invention spread by Western traders and missionaries who wanted to depict the Chinese Empire as cruel and alien. 17th and 18th century travelogues, written by men who often never ventured beyond coastal ports, describe a torture whereby bamboo grows through the body of a man, impaling him by nature's hand. Such tales fit neatly into the European appetite for exotic horror, just as stories of Indian sati or Middle Eastern impalements were circulated for shock and fascination. But there are reasons to believe that while bamboo torture may not have been common or even officially sanctioned, it may have existed in isolated practice. Chinese emperors, particularly during periods of instability, relied on fear to cement loyalty. Punishments were not only tools of justice, but performances meant to awe. Execution grounds were public theaters of dominance. To tie a rebel above sprouting bamboo, even if only once or twice in history, would have sent a powerful message: defy the Son of Heaven, and even the earth itself will rise against you. Consider the context of the Ming Dynasty, 1368 to 1644, a time of both flourishing culture and ruthless suppression. Emperors like Hongwu and Yongle imposed harsh laws to control corruption and rebellion. Executioners devised theatrical deaths that emphasized the emperor's divine authority. It was during this period that European traders first began arriving on Chinese shores, eager for silk, porcelain, and stories. What they witnessed, or thought they witnessed, became exaggerated in retelling. A single whispered execution by bamboo could have blossomed into legend, repeated until it grew roots in Western literature. There are also parallels in neighboring cultures. In Southeast Asia, bamboo was sometimes used as a trap in warfare. Soldiers dug pits, lined them with sharpened shoots, and covered them lightly with earth, creating lethal spikes for enemies to stumble upon. In Japan, stories circulate of prisoners tied above sprouting bamboo in times of civil war. These practices show that bamboo's natural sharpness and rapid growth were well known and feared. Whether or not Chinese emperors institutionalized it, the possibility was always present in the cultural imagination. What makes bamboo torture so compelling as a legend is its unique blend of the natural and the man-made. Most forms of execution, beheading, hanging, burning require direct human intervention. Bamboo torture, by contrast, appears passive. The executioner merely sets the stage, plants the shoot, ties the victim, and waits. Nature does the rest. This gave the punishment a terrifying aura of inevitability. It was not just man who condemned the victim, but the earth itself. In societies where harmony with nature was deeply valued, this inversion, nature becoming executioner, would have carried profound psychological weight. Furthermore, bamboo's speed of growth was central to the horror. European audiences, learning of bamboo's rapid rise, were quick to believe it could pierce flesh within hours. Modern botany confirms that under ideal conditions, bamboo can grow up to 90 centimeters, 35 inches, in a single day. While this does not mean it could slice through a body instantly, over the course of days, it could indeed exert enough pressure to break skin and muscle, especially if the shoot was sharpened beforehand. Thus, while skeptics dismiss the legend as impossible, science suggests that it was at least feasible if cruelly orchestrated. What remains most telling is how the legend endured. Even in the absence of documentation, it passed from one culture to another, retold in books, plays, and even films centuries later. This endurance suggests that the story spoke to something deeper than fact. It embodied fears of helplessness, of time itself as a weapon, of nature turned against man. For Chinese history, the legend also reflects the tension between reverence and dread of emperors. The emperor was seen as the mediator between heaven and earth, the son of heaven. To suggest that bamboo itself could be used in his service reinforced this divine connection. At the same time, it emphasized his ruthlessness and emperor, who commanded not only armies, but the living ground beneath his subjects. Today, historians continue to wrestle with bamboo torture's place in the record. Was it ever real, practiced in some forgotten corner of the empire? Or was it always a myth, born from misunderstanding and carried on the winds of fear? The truth may never be fully uncovered. What we do know is that the story shaped perceptions of imperial China for centuries. It became part of the tapestry of cruelty associated with despotic rulers alongside the racks of Europe and the spikes of the Middle East. Legends, after all, need not be true to be powerful. They only need to be believed. And in the case of bamboo torture, belief has carried the story further than bamboo itself could ever grow. Still, history is not only made of legends. In the next part of this journey, we will step away from the abstract and enter the mind of those said to have faced this fate. Through dramatized accounts and reconstructed testimonies, the story of bamboo torture comes alive not just as rumor, but as lived experience, or at least as the world imagined it. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth. A gray dawn spilled weakly over the bamboo grove, and the condemned man lay bound to the wooden frame, his back pressed against the soil. He had been here 2 nights already. At first, he thought the punishment absurd. How could grass kill a man? But now, as he shifted against his bonds, he felt the sharp, burning truth. Beneath him, a bamboo shoot pressed through his flesh. It had pierced the skin just below his ribs, a thin green spear pushing upward with steady determination. Each hour brought a new stab of pain, not sharp like a sword, but relentless, knowing, unstoppable. He had begged at first, screamed for mercy, but the guards only laughed. Now, his voice was hoarse, his strength slipping. The emperor's officials stood at a distance, silent witnesses. To them, his suffering was not merely justice, it was a performance. This man, once a rebel officer, had dared to plot against the throne. Beheading him would have ended his story too swiftly. Instead, they wanted every villager who heard the tale to shudder, to imagine the earth itself rising to devour a traitor. The prisoner closed his eyes, but the pain did not fade. It was not a single wound. It was a creeping invasion. The bamboo thickened as it grew, pushing deeper into his body. He could feel it scraping muscle, tearing veins, spreading fire inside him. He tried to arch his back, to twist away, but the bindings held him firm. The stalk would not stop. Nature never stopped. Time blurred. Hours, perhaps days, melted into one long agony. At some point, he thought he saw the sky darken with storm clouds. At another, he imagined faces in the stalk spirits of others who had died here, their eyes hollow, their mouths silent. He wondered if his soul, too, would be trapped in the bamboo, forever whispering in the wind. By the 3rd morning, his body was weak, slick with sweat. The bamboo had pierced higher now, climbing toward his chest. Each breath was shallow, ragged. His heart beat against it, as if resisting, as if refusing to yield. The guards watched, stone-faced, waiting for the inevitable. And then, in a moment almost too quiet to notice, the prisoner stopped struggling. His chest rose once, then fell. The bamboo stood taller, a fresh green stalk swaying gently in the morning breeze. The execution was complete not by blade, not by fire, but by the silent strength of the earth. Those who saw it would never forget. To them, it was proof that the emperor's power was infinite, reaching beyond armies and palaces into the roots of nature itself. To others, it was a legend, too cruel to be real, too haunting to dismiss. And so the tale of bamboo torture lived on, carried by whispers, written in half-forgotten texts, retold by travelers in distant lands. Whether truth or myth, it endures as a reminder. Sometimes the slowest deaths are the most terrifying, and sometimes the cruelest blade is the one nature grows. Subscribe to the channel for more interesting content.